Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining. The session is going to be recorded. We will share the recording. Thankfully, I hope it did not catch our little one-on-one before we realized everyone was already joining. So let me share my screen here. Let's try and make this as dynamic as possible. I know that we can't have everyone on camera and with the sound on, but please do feel free to put questions on the Q&As or in the chat if it's already enabled. Okay, and we'll go over them. We will have time for questions at the end as well. As a brief introduction, I'm Barbara. I've been at Amplemarket almost for 3 years now. I used to be on the business development team. Now I'm on the sales development team. Here we structure things a bit differently. So the biz dev team does all of the prospecting, the lead generation, the sequencing, the A/B testing with copy. Then the SDRs do the discovery calls. They do the demos. So having been on the biz dev team and the sales development team, I'm a bit of an Amplemarket power user. And today I'm going to share with you, we already had a webinar based on the strategic lead generation. How can we leverage different kind of triggers to focus our lead generation on? We had a wonderful webinar with Anne Ribeiro from the biz dev team around copy and sequencing. And today we're going to focus, let me share here my screen. How can I share my screen? Share screen. Big green button. Okay. Here I am. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen? Amy, can you just confirm?
Yes, it looks great.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So today we're going to focus on, okay, I know who I want to reach out to. I know what kind of message I want to send across. How do I know where to double down and what to drop? So today we're going to focus a lot on reportings and analytics. Let me come here. I love this quote. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Let me just put this on the other screen. Can you still see my screen? No.
Looks like it was specific to that screen.
Yeah, let me see, or else I'll be, here we go, and slideshow, should be good now. Yes? Okay, so today we're going to focus on different kind of things. First things first, how we can define our ICP. I won't dwell a lot there. We covered this on the lead generation webinar. If for some reason you didn't catch the previous webinars and you'd like to, we're happy to send across the recording. After seeing, okay, these are my personas, what kind of activity, KPIs, should I be tracking to reach my goals? And then how can we analyze everything to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to reach our goals as quickly as possible, and a couple of insights. So defining our ICP. This is where everything starts, because if we're not reaching out to the right people, it's impossible almost to have a good conversion rate from our outbound. Many people usually do this kind of data analysis for the ICP based on their outbound conversion rates. What I would suggest is that you'd focus on analyzing your customer base. So not just who opens your emails the more or who replies the most, but who's actually your closed ones. So once you have your customer base, you can define different, identify different key filters. Okay, so I would suggest industries, the locations, of course, if you want to compare different markets, the company sizes, company types, if it's B2B, if it's B2C, if it's a non-profit, a government, public companies. These are all filters that you can find on our searcher, the department headcount, if it makes sense for your use case, and any relevant technographics. Okay. Afterwards, you can go and see, okay, from all of my closed ones, who were my champions, who were my decision makers, who are the end users. If you want to do bottom-up approaches and regular top-bottom approaches, So you would identify your decision makers, the department, their titles, their seniorities. Okay, these are all things that you can do, and I would highly suggest that you would create them as a persona on the searcher. So this way you wouldn't have to input the, I believe only admins can define the personas for all of the account users. And this way you wouldn't have to put all of the filters whenever you want to start a new search. Bonus thing is that when you pull leads from LinkedIn, from the Chrome extension, you can say, okay, open in searcher, and you can just quickly input the persona filters and just filter down, qualify your leads. So here you would be able to open everything in terms of industries you want to focus on, industries that you want to exclude. If it's a very industry agnostic, even for industry agnostic, there are usually some industries that you can say, okay, I could potentially serve everyone, but these industries, I know that they don't perform as well, or these locations don't perform as well. So you could, instead of filtering by top per industries, top locations, you could just, okay, exclude, but you already know that doesn't work. You can also analyze that from closed lost deals or churned customers. Any questions so far? Yeah, I'm Kenny. You let me know, right, Amy, if something pops up. Perfect, wonderful.
Yes, only one so far, and I was able to answer it in the chat. But yeah, feel free to ask questions. We have chat open or Q&A.
Perfect, thank you. So once you say, okay, this is my ICP, now how many leads do I need to reach out to? I like to do the backwards kind of math. So most companies have a year ARR goal, or team members have year ARR goals or quarterly ARR goals. And the goal here is to make the backwards math. So we start, okay, this is my goal for this year. I know that my average contract value is X, so I can divide it. I need to win, on average, this number of deals. And you know that you have a closed won percentage. So, okay, if I'm only going to win this number of deals, then these are my sales qualified opportunities that I need to book this month. And you just keep doing it backwards. Okay, so if I'm disqualifying or I have no shows after discovery calls, so this is the number of discovery calls that I'm going to need to book. Then, okay, if I only convert X% of all of the leads that I'm going to reach out to, so okay, so this is the number of leads that I need to reach out on a daily basis to make sure that I'll have the discovery calls that I need to hit my sales qualified opportunities goal, to hit my year opportunity goal. And once you have this number, okay, I need to reach out to 200 leads per day to know that, okay, considering the conversion to meetings and everything, to reach my goal. And I also know that I will have a limit based on how many emails I should be sending per mailbox. Ideally, if it's a healthy domain, healthy mailbox, we shouldn't be sending more than 30 to 50 new emails per mailbox per day. We also know that LinkedIn does have a limit of connection requests that we can do on a daily, on a weekly basis. I think it's 100 connection requests per week. And we do have time limitations in terms of how many calls we can make. So having everything this on consideration, okay, I can only reach out, depending on how many mailboxes we have and what's our goal, to imagine 100 leads per day. So I want to make each of those 100 leads count. So that's where account prioritization, lead prioritization will come in place, and data analysis. And that's why we're here, because we want to be very sure, very data driven on what's working, what do we need to double down on, what do we need to let go. Let's change. Okay, so how can we manage there? There are 3 variables that we should be focusing on: the personas, what kind of trigger outbound approach we're doing, and then the channel and the copy that's working the best. So ideally, we will have different, and we can mix and match these 3 variables until we A/B test enough that we can be very certain on a data-driven kind of certainty that, okay, for persona A, the bus signal is recent job changes, and the bus copy is the V3 version, for example. Okay, and if you do this diligence on creating, okay, I'm going to create the different personas that I want to A/B test. I have these kind of strategic outbound approaches that I want to test. And then you can do a deeper dive into your copy, because changing different things, if it's on different parts, will have an impact on different kind of KPIs. So let's start there. We know that there are different insights, different KPIs that we're going to keep a track on. It's usually open rates, reply rates, and conversions to meetings. Those are the main ones. In terms of what will impact the open rate more, besides, I should have inputted here the email infrastructure, sorry. Because if you're hitting spam, it will impact your open rate a lot. We know that what we can do to improve our open rates is having a good email infrastructure, making sure that our deliverability score is good, that we have a warm-up set up, that we're rotating different domains, different mailboxes. And we also know that in terms of what will make a person decide if they're going to open an email or not, it's going to be the subject line and the intro. So the hook, the first line of your email, that's going to show up on the email preview. So if you open your mailbox, you're going to see the subject line and a bit of the first sentence. So that's where we need to make sure, okay, the subject line, theoretically, what's working now is having a very kind of boring subject line. So it should be mimicking that it's an internal email. If you send an email to a coworker, you'll probably put the topic or action required. You won't put the person's name, or usually emojis or exclamation points. Okay, you won't do all capitalizations, for example. So ideally, lower cases, 2-3 words, kind of boring, mimicking internal emails. And the intro should also be, try and spike a bit of the curiosity of the lead. So try starting by you, or you can common approaches are easier to implement. It's like, noticed you did something, saw this, seems that you are doing that, sounds like, for example. These are usually things that help us move away from starting the email with I, me, make the thing more about them to spark their curiosity. It's like, sounds like I what? Like, let me see what this is all about. So open rate, let's dive into the subject line, intro, and also email infrastructure. Then in terms of the reply rate is going to be impacted by the general copy of the email. So if we have a very good introduction, I mean the first line, we usually use it to say, why are we reaching out to that person today? And it's usually related to the trigger that we are using for the approach. So if it's for a job opening, we can say, hey, I noticed that you're hiring for a new SDR, for example, or a job change. Hey, saw that you recently joined company name, congratulations. Or, hey, seems that you're interacting with one of our competitors' team, something like that. Then we can have a value proposition, or make a question about a problem that they might be facing, the call to action, personalization, and relevance. Even if we don't get, if the person isn't interested, or if they're not the right decision maker, if we can nail this down, our reply rate is going to go up. And that's also good for email deliverability, because if it's personalized and if it's a good email, if it's related to them, of course, if you're selling ice to an Eskimo, they might not reply to the cold email. But if it's the right persona, even if they're not the right decision maker within that account, if it's a good email, they might reply saying, hey, no, thank you, I'm not the right person. They might do an introduction, give you the right person's name. Okay, or even just saying that it's no thanks, it's good for email deliverability, better than no reply at all. And or on the worst case scenario, if we have a lot of hard no's, we'll also know that we are not doing a good job here. So either we are missing the mark completely, or we're coming off kind of as spam, but usually a lot of hard no's will tell us that we're not nailing here on the persona. So at all. But the most important thing that we want from our outbound approaches is booking the meetings. And for that, what we need is to be relevant. So we need to nail the three things. We need to have the right people, we have to have the right timing, and we have to have the right message. But even if it's really relevant, if we can nail the person, the timing, we could even cut a bit on the personalization. Or we can use the personalization as the timing, the trigger. So we're reaching out because we noticed one of our champions joined a new company, or because we noticed a promotion. We noticed that they're growing a department, that they might have a project coming up. And that's a personalization usually enough if the rest of the message is resonating. Okay, if you can do all, perfect. That's a great use case also for the AI copywriter. So the AI copywriter, it nails down perfectly here on the personalization, because it will scrape their LinkedIn profile. It's going to pick up different kind of signals from about session, job experience, content they interacted with, content from their company. So it's perfect. So whenever we're not absolutely, okay, how am I going to start this conversation? I don't want to do the manual research. So imagine buying intent signals. That's a good use case. Or if you know that the company is hiring for a full position, but it's not that relevant for the decision maker, or they might not be the hiring manager, you could use the AI copywriter. You know, you have the persona, you have the timing, and you'll use AI copywriter for the personalization, for example. Okay, but once you say, okay, I have my personas, the problems come up more or less on this timing, so I'm gonna use these triggers. I've nailed down the copy. I want to A/B test different versions. How can you analyze it? So what we usually use, and I highly recommend, is having a very clear and structured naming system so you can keep track of the things that you want to test. Either it's in terms of the personas, the sequence tags, or names, because these are the things that you'll be able to input on our analytics and reportings within Amplemarket. Okay, and what this could look like. So here, for example, we're targeting people from the sales department, from smaller companies, and that have at least 3 people on the sales department. And then we want to target, we have usually different sequence tags for the different triggers that we were seeing here. So we can have a tag called job change alerts, buying intent signals, another recent job change, recent promotion, LinkedIn post, LinkedIn events, etc., etc. Okay, so one tag for each kind of approach. You can also have a tag for, but it's not as relevant. If you have the personas on the searcher, you don't need to put them as a tag. We usually keep the tags for the trigger that we're testing. And then we try to input the persona and the approach onto the sequence name. So there, if you can just see, okay, these are the sequence that I have going on, and you can clearly see what you were looking to test. For example, these are some of our current sequence names. So recent job changes, sales from small and medium businesses, or SaaSer Europa, that just happened. And we were trying to book an in-person meeting. This is one of the tags that we have. Whenever it's a copy to try and book in-person meetings, we want to keep track of that. How's that performing in bulk for different kind of events? If we're using the AI copywriter, if it's an event, if it's a LinkedIn post approach for founders for 1 to 5K employees. So here we could quickly identify, okay, this was generated with AI copywriter. It's a LinkedIn post approach. We were targeting founders for these kind of company size. And we can quickly see, okay, how's this one performing? In comparison to LinkedIn post approaches, the same, but for sales titles and for bigger companies. And that would be our variable. And we say, okay, so these are performing best. No questions so far.
No questions so far. We're getting some about wanting previous recordings, which is great. So we'll definitely be sure to share any previous recordings. Just provide your email address in the Q&A. And then everyone here who's registered or attending live will receive today's recording in addition to those previous ones if you give it your approval to us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, so moving on. In terms of then, okay, we've set everything up correctly, the personas, the approaches, the names. We know exactly what we want to test. What kind of metrics will we be looking at? What can we see on Amplemarket's analytics session? So of course, we will be measuring different kind of things in terms of deliverability and in terms of engagement. Okay, in terms of deliverability, we want to focus on the open rate. Deliverability gurus will say that open rate is a vanity metric, that we shouldn't be paying attention to it, and we should only be focusing on the reply rate. Still, I struggle with that. I like to check the open rate nonetheless. These are kind of it's ballpark ranges. Okay, so ideally, our open rate should be over 35%. If we have a healthy domain, healthy mailboxes, and we're doing good subject lines, we should aim to have it over 35%. Our reply rate also, if it's a right persona, right timing, and we are improving the message, the copy, our reply rate should be over 3%. Bounce rate ideally under 10%, and spam or under 1%. I think that with all the current limitations from Google and Outlook, we should probably aim even less than 1% spam to avoid issues. Again, ballpark ranges just to have some benchmarks in mind. Okay, and we should focus open rate, reply rate, bounce rate, and spam rates, okay, for different kind of personas and different kind of approaches. And then in terms of engagement, we should keep a very close eye in terms of the interested reply rate, the meetings booked, and also the not interested, not hard nose. Because if we're having issues nailing the right persona, we will have more not interested and hard nose. If it's wrong message, wrong persona, we'll have a lot of hard nose. But if we're having the right people, and it's just we're making educated guesses about the timing. Okay, so if we have the right people and it's a good message, we will see, even if it's not the right timing for them, we will see an increase here in the ask circle back later or introductions, because we did a good research. It's a good fit. It was a good message. It resonated. So we'll see a spike here. When should we be looking at these things? Ideally, you should be looking at your open rate and your reply rate daily. That's why it's also on the has a big headline on the overview, and you can see, okay, this is my open rate, my reply rate today, this week, this month. And ideally, if you imagine you send out a sequence, after a couple of days, you can see that the open rate and the reply rate is below these benchmarks. If you have a 10% open rate or a 0% reply rate or 1% reply rate after a couple of days, okay, I need to check what might have gone wrong there. Was it the persona? Was it the timing? Was it the message? Is it email deliverability? Am I hitting spam? What's going on there so we can fix it? Then on a weekly basis, we should be looking at the interested reply rate and the meetings booked. Okay, and also on the not interested to see if there's a big spike of not interested, we need to iterate our message. Okay, and then on a monthly basis, we should be looking at the big picture. And the big picture means that we'll be looking for these individual metrics by persona, by sequence, okay, by sequence approach, sequence template, and then trying to compare them. So let's hop into here. I should still be sharing, correct? You're seeing the analytics and reporting?
Yes, it looks great.
Cool. Perfect. Let me just put this a bit smaller. Okay, cool. Okay, there's a lot of cool things that we can now see on the analytics and reporting. Here, if we come here into the filters, there are different things that we'll be able to see in terms of the overview. Okay, big picture, And sequences, if you want to evaluate by different channels, what kind of revenue we're generating, let's start here by sequences. So if we're organizing our sequences correctly by different personas, by different sequence names and tags, we will be able to leverage this to this full capacity. So we can hop here into the filters or the time frame that you want, and then let's start adding filters. And here you can say, okay, I want to use filters based on the persona that I'm targeting, sequence tags, the sequence names, teams, or users. So imagine that you want to see how your SDR team is comparing in terms of your AEs team, or if your AEs are self-prospecting, how are they doing? You can use that, or for a specific user, you can start, okay, I want to start by a sequence tag. And see, we have a lot of sequence tags going on. And before we have the personas, we use the tags, for example, to A/B test different locations. So we had EMEA, North America, different company sizes. Now the persona tags makes our life so much easier. So for example, let's come here and say, okay, I want to go into the LinkedIn. I want to see from LinkedIn approaches. And I also want to see from different kind of personas. So CEOs interacting with LinkedIn posts. And you can be very granular, comparing different personas, different approaches here. You can also put here the sequence name. So imagine that you want to see all of the sequences that say, for example, posts. If it's for a LinkedIn post or for recent job changes, you can start, okay, filtering it down. And the goal there then is to say, okay, then I want to see here. There's a lot of ways that you can put it in, organize it by. Usually my favorite is here, either meetings booked or meetings booked rate. See what has the top conversion here. There's a lot of things that you'll be able to filter by in terms of the revenue. This one is always, can I not? Okay, yes. It's super important, especially when you're focusing more on the rate. It's important to see, okay, but how many meetings, how many leads did I actually have here? Because it's much easier to have a very pretty conversion rate if it's a shorter sequence, a smaller sequence, than if it's, okay, I'm gonna send the sequence to 1,000 of leads, and let's see how it performs. In terms of, okay, when can I get some interesting data to know that this persona or this approach works or doesn't work? Ideally, we should put at least 100 to 200 leads into an approach, so we can have some numbers to take insights from. But if you're putting 200 leads into a sequence and you have 0 reply rate, do iterate before putting more. So it's very important to A/B test, but it's very important to iterate very quickly as well. Okay, I can see, do we have
Few
questions?
questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, so my campaigns get great results in terms of meetings, but my reply rates are often lower than 3%. What would explain that?
What is great results in terms of meetings? I would ask a question back. Well, in terms of reply rates and meetings booked. So we know that usually only 3 to 5% of our total addressable market should be on purchase mode, around 8 meetings a day. Wow, amazing. So congratulations. So that's great. I would dive into, okay, what does that look like in terms of meetings book rate? So if it's 8 meetings per day, which is amazing, very good, but it's a 0.2 meetings booked rate, I would say that if you do a deeper dive into the persona and the kind of approaches that you're like iterating, you will probably be able to increase the number of meetings even further. So I would look here to see what might be causing that. Okay, and here on date filter, is there a place to define our company's quarter cadence? Not standard. Not sure if I understand What's the company's quarter cadence?
And I could be incorrect, so Rochelle, let me know if I'm misunderstanding this, but it sounds like you're wanting to customize the dates. And so you can absolutely do so here in the analytics page. There's a custom date range. There
Yeah.
isn't an option to do so from the overview page just yet, but what I'm imagining, and let me know if this is something that would be helpful. Right now we have like 7 days, month, and quarter. I realize that maybe your quarter might be starting on a different date, but is that what you're also imagining on the overview page, more from like a maybe product feedback perspective?
Can you see the chat? Is the chat enabled, Amy, or just the Q&As? Okay, so here, if you come here onto the analytics and here on the filter, you can customize the dates that you want to filter by. Either here, previous quarter, or just come here and set the correct date. Okay. Okay, good questions. Thank you so much. So coming back here, we also have this interesting column of interested, not booked. So these are people that whose email was tagged as interested, but for some reason they never actually booked a meeting. You can also filter that by on the contacts page, see exactly who these people are. So you can either try and reaching out to them on a different channel, try to engage with them and check why didn't that meeting get booked. Sometimes people just ghost us, but let's try to decrease it as much as possible. So here we can also compare the email open rate. And if you're very precise about the naming, and you can see, okay, for different personas, different events, different copy, you will be able to identify, for example, be granular and say, okay, for imagine a persona for founders and events, this kind of email structure works beautifully. But if it's a similar structure and also for founders, but it's on a LinkedIn post approach, it won't work, for example. Or you can say, okay, for founders in the US, this template for events worked great, and for founders in EMEA, it doesn't. And then you can tweak and tweak and tweak to make your results as great as possible. Also, hard nose, not interested, introductions. Keep a close eye here on the hard nose. If there's any kind of sequence approach that you can see, okay, this persona has a spike in hard nose, it's above average. So maybe that's not the best persona, or maybe the copy is missing the mark completely. And then it's just playing around here with a lot of the different filters that you can put in, what kind of metrics you care most about. Okay, what kind of approach you're putting most leads. If you're focusing on the leads interested rate and the meetings booked rate, you can say, okay, these are my highest meetings booked rate. Usually it's unfortunately the leads that have the most volume. It's not always the ones that have the biggest conversion. But ideally, and let's come back here into the slideshow. Once you have everything super organized, and you can pull the data, I did pull the data from Amplemarket to build this pretty bubble chart, but I find this super insightful in terms to know, okay, these are the total contacts in percentage that we're reaching out to, the percentage of interested reply rates, and the size of the bubble is the number of meetings that we booked. So having these, we organize these by the approaches, not by the personas, just know, okay, what kind of triggers are working better for us. So we know that we get most of our lead volume and also most of our meetings from LinkedIn post approaches, and ICP recently changed. Because we know that these are super easy to filter on the searcher. It's a almost never ending source of leads, either the LinkedIn post approaches and the ICP. So we put more volume there, we'll get more meetings. But we also know that here we have very high reply rates, interested reply rates from job change alerts. And this, I think it was competitors interacting with competitors' leads. Okay, so ideally we know, okay, so we're getting very good conversions out of this. and was a very small percentage of leads that we put in. We got a lot of meetings. So ideally, let's see, how can we double down on this? How can we stop? And we should probably stop doing this and this one. Don't know which one this was, but it did not perform well. Maybe here, LinkedIn newsletters. We A/B test a lot of different approaches, and it's super important because we never know when we're going to like strike gold and find a very scalable, repeatable lead generation process that's going to bring us a lot of meetings on a monthly basis. So this is a bit of what I wanted to cover with you. We still have time for more questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Let me know. Time for questions. I will leave here my contacts. You have my email. We can also connect on LinkedIn. If there's anything that you'd like to, particular questions, anything that I can help within your sequences, your personas, your analytics, let me know. Okay, how do we get this last graph? So once you did all of the, you have your personas and the sequences names all sorted out, you can come here and you can export. You can remove, I would remove here all the filters or just leave the filters for the time frame that you want to analyze. And then you'll have to download all of the information. And then this was a bit of a manual work. Okay. So once, I'm not sure if this is on the roadmap, that we can export also the tags of the sequences. So what I did was export all of the sequences and then put a column with the approach tag. Okay, and once we have that, we can aggregate all the different sequences and know, okay, in bulk for this sequence approach, this tag, this was the result. And then we can just build up the chart. But it is, again, a bit of a manual process. Yeah, you can get most of this information here, depending on how you're organizing the sequence names. Any other questions? Was this what you were expecting for the second, or is there anything that you were hoping to cover? We still have a couple of minutes.
And if you'd like to talk live, we can also, we should be able to unmute your mic if you'd like to talk to us live.
Any inputs you would add here, Amy, from your conversations with our customers? Best practice around number of sequences. I am a terrible person to ask that because we have dozens of sequences going on, and we're actually brainstorming, okay, how can we consolidate the sequences? We A/B test a lot, so it's not I wouldn't say that there's a best practice that will work for everyone. It will depend on what kind of triggers make sense for you to explore. So there I would do that exercise that we discussed on the first webinar. Say, okay, let's build your persona matrix. So these are your personas, these are their responsibilities, what the KPIs that they're focusing on, what kind of problems they might be facing, and how can you provide value to them? What kind of KPI improvement will you provide? And creating the message around that. Okay, identifying when is the right timing to reach out to them. How can you leverage that into the triggers? So you can say, okay, this is a good moment to reach out to them. I can capture this using this filter on the searcher. Either it's a hiring for a position, technology, ending soon, recent job change, promotions, job change alerts, buying intent signals. I would say that if you're testing a lot of different triggers, you should have at least one sequence for each of them. So you can compare different intent triggers. How are they performing in terms of meeting booked conversion? And we could probably have here. Let's come back. What was the persona here? This one. So if we're having these three variables, for each persona, you should have one sequence for each persona for each event. If it's important to you to know how each persona is comparing, and then you also will want to probably A/B test different kind of copies. So imagine if you have 3 personas, then you would have 3 versus the number of triggers that you're testing versus the number of copies that you're testing as well. So it could be 3 plus multiplying by 3, multiplying by 3. Or more. Most people do have more personas. This could add up quite quickly in terms of how many sequences you have going on. And that's exactly why it's important to be very organized in terms of how you're naming your sequence and keeping an eye on on all of these conversions on a very also structured way. So on a daily basis, you know that my metrics should be above this. On a weekly basis, we need to be striking this. And ideally, here, going back to the beginning, we know that if we're not measuring it, we can't manage it. So it's important also to have daily KPIs that you can report as a team. Say, okay, today I scheduled X number of leads. Today I did X number of cold calls. What we usually do, we post this on a Slack channel saying, okay, today we scheduled this number of new leads on these kind of approaches. And this month we have generated already X number of meetings, and we are at X% of attainment for the month. So this keeps us accountable. It also keeps us motivated when we're doing a good job, and it puts a bit of good stress when we need to pick up the pace. Can admins add tags to sequences created by others? Yes. Yes, you can.
I think to add to that, we recently merged the way sequence and sequence templates are performed. So as long as the sequence is shared to the entire organization and also editable, then you'll be able to add the tag on as well.
That's weird, but maybe that we can help with on a one-on-one.
Yeah, let me send you, Irina, our support email. It sounds like maybe that particular sequence isn't, like I mentioned, maybe public to the entire organization and editable, but we'll double check with our support team. I'll send it to you now.
No, I think the question from João Magalhães is for you, Amy.
Oh, good question. Let me send you we actually just reopened our success email. So I'm going to send you our success email, and that way we can help you with credits. And we can go from there. Of course.
I think we're all out of questions. So thank you so much for joining. I hope this was helpful. I'm gonna stop sharing here. It's always good to have these kind of live conversations. I am a fan of being able to see the person's faces. It's usually a bit more fun, but it was great. Thank you so much for putting the questions on the Q&A. It's really cool to have that feedback from you. I hope this was helpful. We will send over the recording. If there's any question that comes to mind, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email.